watch a special called The Levees Broke that Spike Lee did. Go watch a bunch of shit to understand this is not just some, yo, Katrina happened, nigga said, nah, nigga, my city is gone, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So your request was not uncalled for, even though you got an advance. It was a catastrophic situation that happened.
Cam, big brother, that's how I felt about it. I was like, say, bro, you just gave me an advance, but this situation, I just not to soften it up, but I don't think he understood the detrimental situation of Katrina at the moment, you dig? Because when I told him to help me, he basically told me to get on the road. He was like, you better get on the road. Like, get on the road. I ain't got no home to go to.
Yeah. Where am I going?
The internet didn't just blink, it convulsed. Because in a single moment, hip-hop's most calculated provocateur lit a match and tossed it straight into a room full of gasoline. 50 Cent didn't sneak this one out. He didn't joke. He didn't hide behind sarcasm. He said it loud, public, and with his chest, he would buy Jim Jones and Maino's podcast. And just like that, the temperature of the culture spiked to dangerous levels. This wasn't about content anymore. This was about power. Within minutes, timelines erupted. Clips replayed. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Fans froze on one question: was 50 joking, or was this a hostile takeover threat in real time? Because when 50 talks ownership, history says he's not playing. And that's exactly why this hit so hard. Buying the podcast doesn't just mean buying microphones and cameras, it means owning the conversation, the narrative, the voices. In hip-hop, that's an act of war. Then Camron stepped in. And that's when everything changed. Cam didn't react like a fan. He reacted like someone who's seen this movie before, and knows how ugly the ending can get. His response wasn't loud, but it was lethal. Calm. Sharp. Loaded with meaning. The kind of reaction that tells you this isn't internet jokes, this is chess. And suddenly, what started as podcast talk exploded into something much deeper: old alliances, unresolved tension, bruised pride, and the unspoken history that never really stays buried. Because when money enters a beef, it stops being entertainment. It becomes personal. And the moment Cam spoke, everyone realized this wasn't just another 50 Cent moment. This was a warning shot. The shock didn't fade after the first headline, it multiplied. Because once people realized 50 Cent wasn't laughing, wasn't trolling, and wasn't walking the comment back, the story mutated into something far more dangerous. According to insiders watching the fallout in real time, phones started ringing immediately. Managers. Media partners. Lawyers. People who understood exactly what a sentence like, "I'll buy the podcast," actually means in hip-hop culture. This wasn't shade. This was leverage. Within hours, clips of Jim Jones and Maino discussing 50 began circulating again, cut tighter, sharpened, weaponized. Every pause, every laugh, every side comment was reinterpreted as provocation. Fans argued over who started it, but insiders say that questions stopped mattering the moment money entered the conversation. Because when ownership is mentioned publicly, the conversation is no longer about opinions, it's about dominance. And that's where Camron's reaction became gasoline. Cam didn't jump on live screaming. He didn't fire off reckless tweets. He did something far more unsettling. He laughed first. Not a joke laugh, a knowing one. According to people who caught the full reaction, that laugh said, "I've seen this before." And then he spoke carefully, deliberately, choosing words that sounded light but landed heavy. He questioned whether 50 was serious, then immediately followed it with something that froze the room: "If you want to buy it, you need to talk to the people who actually own it." That line split the internet in half. Because on the surface, it sounded reasonable. Underneath, it was a reminder. A line in the sand. A quiet message that ownership isn't a punchline, and it's not for sale just because someone says it is. Fans immediately picked up on the shift. Comment sections exploded. Cam is not joking. This just got real. Why does this feel like old Dipset energy waking back up? Then the alleged leak started. Screenshots began circulating from supposed behind-the-scenes conversations claiming that the podcast's numbers had spiked the moment 50 mentioned buying it. Engagement up. Views climbing. Sponsors suddenly interested. One insider allegedly said, "This is the best thing that could have happened to them, and the worst. Because while beef boosts metrics, it also attracts sharks. And nobody swims with more sharks than 50. Another alleged insider claimed there were internal disagreements already brewing before the comment even happened. Different visions. Different comfort levels with how far commentary should go. If true, 50's statement didn't just escalate an external beef, it poured pressure directly onto cracks that were already there. Fans started speculating whether that was intentional. Whether this was less about Jim and Maino personally, and more about testing the stability of what they'd built. Social media went nuclear. Twitter became a battlefield of think pieces and insults. TikTok creators broke down Cam's tone frame by frame. YouTube channels ran hour-long lives dissecting whether 50 was bluffing. Old interviews resurfaced where 50 talked about buying networks, buying catalogs, buying control. None of it helped calm things down. It made the threat feel more real. Then came the rumor that changed everything. An anonymous account claiming to be connected to the business side of the podcast alleged that 50 had already made inquiries. Not public offers, quiet ones. Asking about structure. Ownership percentages. Contracts. Whether the platform was clean. No proof was ever shown. But the timing was too perfect. And in hip-hop, perception moves faster than facts. Camron addressed that rumor without addressing it directly. According to viewers, he leaned back, smirked, and said something that sounded casual but hit like a brick. Some people think everything got a price. Everything don't. That sentence spread everywhere. Fans called it a warning. Others called it posturing. But no one called it accidental. Cam knew exactly who he was talking to. And then the conversation took a darker turn. Longtime fans began revisiting the complicated history between Cam, Jim, and 50. Old alliances. Old tension. Moments that never fully resolved. People started asking uncomfortable questions. Was Cam stepping in as a mediator, or as a protector? Was this about loyalty, or about control of narrative? Because Cam reacting at all signaled something important, this wasn't just Jim and Maino's issue anymore. Insiders claimed that after Cam spoke, communication went quiet. No more jokes. No more playful posts. Just silence. Strategic silence. The kind that usually means people are reassessing moves before the next one lands. That silence only made fans louder. Memes turned sharper. Takes got hotter. Everyone wanted to know who would speak next, Jim, Maino, or 50. And 50? He did what he always does. He leaned into it. According to observers, he liked posts, reposted clips, let the conversation swirl without clarifying anything. That non-response was interpreted as confirmation by half the internet. Because 50's playbook is well known, let people argue, then strike when attention peaks. Fans began predicting a response that would escalate things even further, a real offer, a public mock contract, or a joke so cutting it would force someone's hand. Meanwhile, Cam's involvement continued to reframe the entire situation. People noticed he wasn't defending Jim emotionally. He was defending principle. Ownership. Respect. The right to speak without being threatened by a checkbook. That nuance mattered. Because it positioned Cam not as a sidekick, but as a boundary setter. Someone reminding the room that hip-hop independence still means something. But not everyone agreed. Critics accused Cam of inserting himself for relevance. Others argued he should have stayed out of it entirely. those takes didn't slow anything down. They added fuel. Because Cam responded to those criticisms too, subtly. Pointing out that when history repeats itself, ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. And then came the cliffhanger moment. During a conversation that fans immediately clipped and replayed, Cam dropped a sentence that stopped everything. If somebody really serious about buying something, there's a process. He didn't finish the thought. He didn't explain. He let it hang. And in that pause, the internet filled in the blanks. Process means paperwork. Process means meetings. Process means lawyers. And that's when people realize this might not end with words. Because if 50 decides to turn this from talk into action, it won't just test Jim and the silence after Cam's last sentence didn't calm anything down, it electrified it. Because when someone with Camron's history pauses mid-thought, people don't hear hesitation. They hear calculation. And according to insiders watching the situation unfold, that pause triggered a scramble behind the scenes that most fans never saw. Within hours, alleged private group chats lit up across the industry. Managers texting managers. Media execs calling favors. People asking one question over and over again, is 50 actually serious? Because joking is one thing. But in hip-hop, when 50 Cent smells leverage, jokes have a way of turning into paperwork. Then Jim Jones spoke, and everything cracked open again. Not a rant. Not an explosion. Just a few words, delivered with a tone that sounded calm but landed sharp. According to fans who caught it live, Jim made it clear the podcast wasn't a toy, wasn't a joke, and wasn't something you threatened to buy like sneakers off a shelf. He reminded people it was built from the ground up, brick by brick, voice by voice. That statement alone reignited the fire because it directly challenged the power dynamic 50 was flexing. And that's when Maino jumped in. Maino didn't raise his voice either. He didn't insult. He did something far more dangerous. He laughed, the kind of laugh that signals disbelief mixed with irritation. Then he questioned why ownership keeps getting thrown around like intimidation. According to insiders, that moment mattered. Because Maino has always been seen as the grounded one. The calm voice. When he sounded annoyed, fans knew the situation had crossed from playful into disrespect. Social media went feral. Twitter timelines split into camps. One side called 50 a genius for even floating the idea, praising him for reminding everyone who really controls capital in the culture. The other side called it corny, saying threatening to buy someone's platform was the digital age version of bullying. TikTok creators stitched Cam's reaction with Jim's response and Maino's laugh, calling it 3 different energies reacting to the same threat. The views climbed by the millions. Then the alleged insider leaks got darker. One anonymous source claimed that after 50's comment went viral, sponsors tied to the podcast suddenly got nervous. Not because of controversy, but because controversy attracts sharks. The source alleged that a brand asked point-blank whether the podcast was protected or if ownership could change hands suddenly. That single word, protected, sent chills through fans. Because it suggested that even the idea of a takeover was already creating real-world consequences. Another alleged insider claimed that conversations were happening about tightening contracts, revisiting ownership splits, and making sure nothing could be weaponized. Whether true or not, the rumor alone reinforced how serious this had become. This wasn't about jokes anymore. This was about infrastructure. Camron addressed this shift without naming it. In a follow-up moment that fans immediately clipped, he said something that sounded philosophical but cut straight to the core: when people talk money before respect, you already know what time it is. That line exploded. Because it framed the entire situation as a values clash. Respect versus capital. Voice versus ownership. And Cam was clearly signaling where he stood. That didn't sit well with everyone. Critics accused Cam of moralizing a situation that didn't need it. They argued that 50 wasn't wrong for flexing his power, that this is how business works, and that hip-hop has always rewarded the bold. Others fired back that business without respect is exploitation. The comment sections turned into debates about independence, capitalism, and whether ownership talk has any place in public beefs. Then came the moment everyone knew was coming. 50 Cent responded again. Not directly. Not clearly. But unmistakably. According to fans, he reposted a clip of himself laughing, with a caption that read like a shrug wrapped in menace. No denial. No clarification. Just energy. And that was enough. Because when 50 chooses ambiguity, it's rarely accidental. It's bait. Insiders claim that repost reignited conversations behind the scenes that had briefly paused. People started assuming the next move wouldn't be words, it would be action. A mock offer. A public troll bid. A calculated humiliation disguised as humor. Fans began speculating about what form it would take, and whether Jim and Maino were prepared if it actually happened. Cam's reaction to 50's repost was subtle, and terrifying. He didn't respond immediately. He waited. Hours passed. Then he casually mentioned in another conversation that people confuse attention with control. That sentence landed like a slap. Because it suggested that 50 might be winning the moment, but not the war. And coming from Cam, that wasn't theory. That was experience talking. The history matters here. Cam has seen how quickly alliances shift when money enters the room. He's watched deals sour, friendships collapse, and brands implode over ego. According to insiders, that's why his reaction has been so measured. He's not defending a person. He's defending a principle, that building something gives you the right to stand on it without being publicly challenged by someone else's wallet. But not everyone is convinced this ends peacefully. Some fans believe Cam's involvement actually raises the stakes. That his presence turns this from a two-sided exchange into a cultural moment. Because when Cam speaks, Dipset history comes with him. Old wounds. Old loyalty tests. People started asking whether this could reopen cracks that never fully healed. Whether Jim feels supported, or pressured. And Jim? According to observers, he's walking a tightrope. He can't back down without looking weak. He can't overreact without escalating things further. Every word is being watched, dissected, reframed. Insiders claim he's aware of that, and that's why his responses have been controlled. Strategic. But control doesn't erase tension. It compresses it. Then another rumor dropped late at night that sent shockwaves through fan spaces. An account claiming to have industry ties alleged that a third party had quietly reached out about media consolidation opportunities involving multiple platforms, not just one podcast. No names. No proof. But the implication was chilling, that this moment might be part of something bigger. A reshaping of who owns conversation in hip-hop media. Cam didn't respond to that rumor at all. And that silence might be the loudest move yet. Because when someone who's been talking suddenly stops, it usually means they're watching someone else step into a trap. Fans began speculating that Cam already knows what the next move will be, and that he's letting it happen. As of now, the situation is suspended in midair. 50 hasn't clarified whether the threat was real or rhetorical. Jim and Maino haven't backed down, but haven't escalated either. Cam has drawn a boundary without closing the door. And the audience? They're holding their breath. Because if 50 decides to turn this into a spectacle, a public offer, a mock purchase, a viral humiliation, it will force a response that can't be undone. And once that line is crossed, this won't just be podcast drama. It will be a battle over who controls the mic. And with Cam watching closely, the next move could redefine everything. By the time dawn broke after that rumor about media consolidation, the energy around this situation stopped feeling like entertainment and started feeling like pressure. Because now, the idea that this was just 50 Cent trolling no longer held weight. According to alleged insiders, too many conversations were happening behind the scenes for this to be random. Too many calls. Too many sudden silences. Too many people acting like they were waiting for permission to speak. And that's when Camron's reaction shifted from commentary to posture. People close to the situation say Cam wasn't surprised by any of this. In fact, one alleged insider claimed Cam saw this coming the moment Jim and Maino started speaking freely about 50 on a platform that was growing fast and making real noise. Because in Cam's world, visibility always attracts power plays. And when power feels challenged, it doesn't argue, it acquires. Cam's next move was subtle but surgical. He didn't address 50 directly. He didn't mention the podcast by name. Instead, he spoke about ownership in a broader sense, telling a story about people who build something, let it grow, and then realize too late that everyone else has an opinion on what it's worth. The message was clear without being explicit. Value isn't just numbers. It's history. It's sweat. It's pride. And not everything is for sale just because someone says they can afford it. That message landed hard. Fans immediately clocked the shift in tone. This wasn't playful anymore. This was Cam drawing a philosophical line, and by doing that, he raised the stakes. Because now the conversation wasn't about 50 versus Jim and Maino. It was about what happens when money tries to rewrite respect in public. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. 50 Cent finally spoke again, and this time, it wasn't ambiguous. According to multiple clips that spread like wildfire, 50 leaned into the moment with a grin that fans know all too well. The grin that usually comes right before escalation. He didn't say, "I was joking." He didn't say, "I won't do it." Instead, he doubled down on the idea of ownership being power. The implication was unmistakable: if something exists in the marketplace, it can be bought. Period. That statement sent shockwaves through the culture. Because whether or not he ever intended to make an offer stopped mattering. The message had already landed. It was about reminding everyone who holds leverage, and who doesn't. And in hip-hop, that kind of reminder is rarely forgiven. Jim Jones reacted almost immediately. Not angry. Not emotional. Just firm. According to viewers, Jim made it clear that his platform wasn't built to be intimidated out of existence. He spoke about independence like someone who's fought for it, lost it, and rebuilt it again. That context mattered. Because Jim isn't just talking about a podcast, he's talking about survival in an industry that's taken from him before. Maino followed with something even sharper. He questioned why buying things has become the go-to response instead of conversation. Why money gets used as punctuation in disagreements. And that question hit harder than any insult. Because it exposed the uncomfortable truth underneath all of this: power doesn't like being questioned, and money doesn't like being laughed at. Social media erupted again. Some fans celebrated 50, calling it a masterclass in psychological warfare. Others turned on him, saying this crossed from clever into corny. Comment sections turned into philosophy classes about capitalism, culture, and whether hip-hop has lost its soul to balance sheets. Influencers picked sides. Podcasters ran emergency lives. Everyone wanted to be part of the moment. But Cam stayed quiet. And that silence spoke louder than anything else. According to alleged insiders, Cam didn't like how quickly this was sliding away from dialogue and into dominance. Because Cam has always understood something many people forget: once you frame everything as a purchase, you reduce people to assets. And assets don't get loyalty, they get flipped. That's when the most chilling rumor surfaced yet. An anonymous account claimed that Cam had privately advised Jim to be careful not just with words, but with structure. To make sure everything was locked down. Protected. Untouchable. No loopholes. No vulnerabilities. Whether true or not, that rumor changed how fans interpreted Cam's entire involvement. He wasn't just reacting. He was advising. Guarding. Preparing. And if that's true, it means Cam believes this could actually go somewhere real. Meanwhile, industry chatter suggested people were already choosing sides. Some executives reportedly admired 50's audacity. Others worried that turning ownership into a threat would scare creators away from partnerships. The idea that a powerful figure could publicly suggest buying someone's voice sent a ripple of discomfort through the media world. Because if this becomes normal, independence starts looking fragile. Cam finally addressed that tension directly. In a quiet moment that didn't trend as loudly as the others, he said something that cut through everything: just because you can buy something doesn't mean you should. No name. No target. Just principle. That line didn't need amplification. It didn't need explanation. People who understood it felt it immediately. And then, everything paused. No new posts. No new threats. No clarifications. Just watching. Fans noticed 50 pulling back slightly, not retreating, but waiting. Jim and Maino continued business as usual, almost defiantly. And Cam? He stayed exactly where he'd positioned himself, in the middle, but not neutral. Watching the board like someone who knows the next move matters more than the last one. The cliffhanger now isn't whether 50 can buy the podcast. It's whether he will try. Because if he does, even as a joke, even as a troll offer, it forces a response that can't be walked back. It forces Jim and Maino to publicly reject money. It forces the culture to decide whether power should be allowed to talk that loudly. And it forces Cam to choose whether he stays an observer, or becomes an active shield. And that's the part nobody is ready for. Because if Cam steps fully into this, it won't be about podcast beef anymore. It will be about legacy, lines, and who gets to decide the value of a voice. And once that question is asked out loud, hip-hop doesn't forget the answer. If you're still watching right now, understand this: you're witnessing a moment that's bigger than viral clips and trending hashtags. This is about power, ownership, and who really controls the conversation when money enters the room. And moments like this don't just fade away. They evolve. Quietly. Strategically. Until suddenly, everything looks different. This is exactly the kind of situation where the real story doesn't break in one headline, it breaks in pieces. A post here. A response there. A move nobody sees coming until it's already done. And the people who aren't locked in from the start are always the ones trying to catch up after the damage is done. That's why your engagement right now actually matters. Liking this video keeps the conversation visible when others want to dismiss it as just entertainment. Commenting forces the discussion to stay public, where power can't quietly reshape the narrative. And subscribing makes sure you're here when the next move happens, not after it's been softened, spun, or explained away. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was 50 Cent crossing a line, or was this just business being stated out loud? Was Cam right to step in, or should he have stayed silent? And what does this say about where hip-hop is headed when ownership becomes a weapon? Because this story isn't over, it's just paused. And when it resumes, you'll want to say you were here before everyone pretended they saw it coming.